Everyone, and welcome. I'm Carolyn Middleton, the Director of College Counseling at Berkeley Carroll, the person from whom you receive many, many messages, and you will over the course of the time you're in the upper school. I'm delighted that you are able to join us this morning, and we will be recording this session for any folks that aren't able to make the meeting this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule on a Tuesday morning. As you probably know, we do these coffees where you're kind of bringing your own coffee every semester. Some parents and guardians will attend 4 of these before we begin our earnest work with your students one-on-one, but we hope that it gives an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about the process and ease into what the college process is all about. I'm going to just introduce my colleagues to you and then hand the program over to Mr. Almonte. First, I want to introduce Kalia Williams, one of our other college counselors. Kalia has been here for, is it 8 years now, Kalia? 7 years, yes. I keep forgetting how long I'm here. Mary Dunn, who you've probably met before and have known for quite a while. I won't say the number of years unless you'd like to, Mary.
24
years.
Yeah.
So a lot of institutional history here. And then finally, Luis Almonte, who's the newest member of our team and the person who's going to be moderating today's panel. So I'll hand it over to you, Luis. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carolyn. Just to let everybody in the audience know, I am starting my 4th year with Berkeley Carroll, so new-ish, but not so new. So we are really excited to have all of you joining us today for our fabulous panel, our parent panel. We like to call it the Mother's Day edition because it was just Mother's Day and we all have all moms on the panel. So I want to first start by introducing our panelists. So panelists, if you could please start by stating your name, your student or students' names, and the year that they graduated or are graduating. And I'm gonna ask if you can withhold where they go to college, and we'll reveal that at the very end, just to keep everyone in suspense. So we can start, whoever wants to start speaking first can kind of take the mic.
I'll start since, so my name is Wendy Melk. My children were Berkeley Carroll lifers. Both of them started in kindergarten. So my son Logan graduated in 2019 and he just is finishing his junior year of college. And my daughter Piper graduated last year in 2021 and she just finished her freshman year of college.
Hi, I'm Shin-Hee Han. I have one son who attended Berkeley Carroll from 9th grade, and he graduated in 2021, Sean, and he's finishing up his first year in college.
I'm Laura Hobgood, and my son is Ryan Issa, and he started in the 10th grade at Berkeley Carroll, and he's about to graduate in a few weeks.
Congratulations. So just to set the agenda for today, this is a opportunity for 9th and 10th grade parents and families to really understand, the arc of the process and ask any questions that you might have. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna start just asking some questions. And then once the coffee starts kicking in or the tea starts kicking in, if you all feel so privy to, you can use the question and answer feature on the bottom of the webinar. And then once we see that there's some questions there from the audience, we'll open it up to audience questions. So our panel of experts can, disperse their knowledge on you. So to get started, I will ask my first question is, parents, would you share any thoughts or feelings that you had in starting the college process? So, this is a big deal, understanding that your student's going to move on to a different institution. Wendy, I know that you said that your students were there for life. What was that experience like starting for all of you?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you can start.
So for me, I had 2 very different experiences that I think, Louis, you're going to ask me about. So my son is a student athlete. And so when we started the process with him, it was more, he was very, very focused on playing soccer and playing for a Division I school. So his process was different because we didn't have a lot of control. I mean, he was being recruited. So, it was sort of for him, more of a natural progression of his youth athletics than, anything else. And for Piper, I mean, when we started the process, I mean, she obviously, she initially, I will say, was thinking of, she was being recruited. She was also an athlete. She decided in her junior year that she did not want to play sports in school, and she really wanted to focus more on, she wanted a full package of academics and social life. So, for her, it was sort of more of a seamless, more natural process of, okay, she's definitely going to college. And she started thinking about, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What kind of school do I want? So it was natural. I will say, and I think Shinhee, you probably went through the same thing. Our kids were the COVID kids, right? Our kids, we had to go through the whole college application process with them sitting on their beds. And, we couldn't really do a lot of, I mean, we wound up going to see a couple of schools, but we were really constricted on visiting campuses. So it was a unique process that Lewis, you helped guide us through, but I felt like she had a more typical, I'm going to apply to 10 different schools and see where I get in. And, there was all the anxiety that's related to that. Whereas Logan, we knew in July before his senior year, he was, he signed his letter of intent and we knew where he was going then. So there was a lot of the anxiety taken out of that. So that was my experience sort of moving through it.
I would definitely agree with Wendy. It was really a precarious period where, Sean was in his little cave and attending these online school visits. And then when he did go on a couple of visits, physical visits to school, the campuses were empty. And I think that really kind of didn't excite him in a way that we were hoping that, any kind of physical visit might. But I think what we ended up kind of through this gradual process was that he wanted a overall really solid liberal arts program that was a little bit bigger than BC, and the guidance, step by step was very helpful in figuring those schools. And the other thing that, because we were in the midst of the pandemic and schools were locked, we made a choice to apply to schools that were nearby or where we had family. And so that was probably a choice that we wouldn't have made otherwise.
Yeah, but the world looked like, echoing what you said, the world looked very different, and having to tailor the college search process, whether it's a virtual experience or just the search criteria changes altogether, seems like you adapted pretty well to that. Awesome. And Laura, how about you? Ryan, I know kind of started virtual and then now everything is in person for the most part. So what was your experience like starting this process with Ryan?
I mean, with him, I think your meetings with him were invaluable because he wanted to focus on schools that were very good in engineering because he wanted to do mechanical engineering. And, but he also wanted a school that, wasn't just a technical school that was only engineering, like, because he wanted to minor in architecture perhaps, and he wanted to take other courses, language courses and things. So he wanted like a school that was good at everything, you know, but with an emphasis on engineering. And at first, you know, we did have this big list of schools, and you know, we used, because everything was still closed when we started to do the search process, like we did do a lot of the online tours, and we also decided, you know, the schools that were within driving distance, we would just get in the car and go to the various campuses, and we took his bike with us. So when we got there, even though there were no actual guided tours, like he took his bike, he'd ride around the campus just to get like a feel for the campus and the town that these various schools were in, you know, and we'd try to do, like one day we went to Boston, so we went to Harvard campus and MIT campus and Northeastern and Boston University. You know, we try to see a number of schools that were in certain geographic areas. And we did, you know, we did see quite a number of schools. Like we went to Pennsylvania one day, we went to Princeton one day, we went to Brown one day. Like we try to do this on the weekends and during spring break. So, I mean, I think that was helpful also, that he at least got a feel for, even though it wasn't like an official tour, like he did get a feel for the campus and the towns they were located in. And then we also used to, again, because there were no actual tours, we'd watch some of these YouTube videos from various students, either from the school or from various students would have like day in the life at this school or that school. So we watched a number of those just to get more of a flavor of what the student life was like at various schools as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I can say, you know, with this class that's about to graduate in the year before, you know, really got hit with a curveball with, you know, the schools adapting to lockdown policies and, you know, physical distancing restrictions. But I will say that I think that they navigated the process very well and they adapted very quickly. And I want to, you know, my hat's off to all of you, because I know that's a strange place to be in when you have this idea of, you know, what the college search process is going to be and then what it morphs into. But all your students handled it very well and with grace, which is absolutely awesome. And to kind of reiterate to the audience out there, you know, schools did completely shut down, similar to Berkeley Carroll. And now they are up and running. They are offering tours. In terms of what those numbers for tours or information sessions look like, sometimes they're capped, but things are ticking a little differently, which a lot of our students this year were able to see at the, I would say towards the end of the summer into the senior year this year. So a lot of things have changed and adapted. So, you know, fingers crossed for the better that it, you know, stays that way or keeps getting better. So in beginning the process, the students basically get a preliminary college list from their college counselor with 30 schools. So there's 10 schools for each category, which is a reach, a middle, and a foundation. So, you know, that list can be quite large, and there might be some schools that the family or the students are looking at outside of that list that the college counselor presents them. So how did you make it digestible for you or your student? How were they able to approach it and tackle it in a way that made it feel manageable?
It was overwhelming, and some of the schools we didn't even know what, you know, and I think it just began with speaking with you, Louis, and getting a sense, and then going on the website and just doing their online tours first. And when the schools came to visit, I think attending them and just meeting a representative from the college or university was somewhat helpful also. And then, you know, just talking to other, you know, Sean's friends and their families, and then our, you know, different friends whose kids have gone through different college experiences, and just gradually narrowing it down. But we did look at all I think 30 of them in the beginning, just to kind of get a sense of any kind of uniqueness that each school presented. And, you know, I would say like different from Wendy, like my son is pretty well-rounded, like liberal arts student. So it wasn't so clear what he wanted to do, or he still doesn't know, but just kind of a way of a school that would help him explore different options. And so I think Louis, you helped him kind of figure out what schools were pretty solid in the liberal arts.
Cool, awesome. And yeah, I think just to kind of reiterate, the list a lot of times is based off of a search criteria. So students will fill out surveys, students will have conversations with their college counselor, and based off of that, you know, we craft a personalized preliminary college list just for students to get started looking at different places. But also kind of expanding that radius of, you know, what they're used to, or the colleges or universities that I would say are household names, and kind of letting them understand different colleges that are on the other side of the country, if that's what they're looking for, maybe in a different country. Just it's very personalized and based on their experience.
So for us, again, we had two very different experiences with Piper last year. We thought the lists were really helpful. I will say that Piper knew, I mean, she has an older brother, so she, you know, had been to a couple of college tours before we even started the process. So she really, Louis, you'll probably remember this. I mean, she was focused on, she wanted a big rah-rah school with really strong academics. So you were able to give us, you know, a couple of choices that she hadn't really thought about, which was really great. And also what I thought for her in particular was helpful. So there's the foundation, there's the middle, and then there's like the reaches. You know, again, with the COVID kids, the reaches, you know, we were the first year, our kids were the first year that there was the standardized tests were not required. So the reaches, like that line between the middle and the reaches became a little blurred. You know, so it was sort of figuring out really, are they truly reaches? Are they not reaches? But I felt for Piper, it gave her just more options than she had been thinking about. And look, there were some schools on there that she automatically crossed out. She's like, I'm not going to a school that's less than 2,500 people. Like,
Right.
You know, and I bring that back to, she was a Berkeley Carroll lifer. So for her, you know, having gone to school her whole life with, you know, essentially the same group of 60 to 90 kids, she wanted bigness. So we were able to say, okay, we're not gonna, you know, those are not of interest to her. Here's some schools that may not be the 30,000, you know, student campus, but are more in the, you know, 8,500 to 10,000 that she may not have thought about. And we did go visit those. So I thought it was really, really helpful. And it focused her a little bit more on, here's schools that may have everything she's looking for that she may not have thought about.
Absolutely.
I mean, we use that list as our guide, you know, that preliminary list to really kind of focus, because it's really overwhelming, you know, when you have like this book that has thousands of schools in it, like it's kind of it's overwhelming. But when, you know, we work with that list, and I actually, we both would read in that guidebook, like the descriptions of the schools, and sort of make notes about, I've had a whole spreadsheet, that was me, not my son, but about, you know, the characteristics of the school, you know, how many students were in the school and the location. Because I just felt like a school that was a really small school in kind of a really remote location wouldn't really be a great fit for him, you know. So, I mean, we use some of the descriptions in that book and to kind of whittle the list down a little bit. And then, you know, we use some of the other things that I mentioned before to to just find out more about the unique features of the various schools on the list. But you know, it was very helpful to have that list because I guess the list was based on the interview with the student and discussions with him about what he wanted rather than, you know, what I might have thought he should do, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, it was more tailored to the students' individual needs and desires. So it was very helpful.
And so I do want to remind the audience, I encourage you to start dropping your questions in the Q&A feature. But that's a perfect segue for my next question. Thank you, Laura. So, you know, when starting this process, I think not all the times, but there's times where there's a bit of a disagreement or there's some synergy between the parents and what the student wants. And really kind of understanding like where you envision your child going to college or university, and then what the student actually wants, and then where they actually go, right? So my question is, was your search criteria different than what your student was looking for or what you envisioned? And how did you navigate that conversation and ultimately have your student come to a decision or to some sort of compromise?
I'll start because look, I did have, especially, so for, again, Logan, his search was just so like unique. I mean, it was not, you know, we started the recruiting process actually in 9th grade. So for him, we were all on the same page, and you know, he was looking for certain things, and his process was different. For Piper, I will say there was, I won't call it tension, but you know, my husband and I really saw her, I'll be honest, at an Ivy League. That was not what she wanted. She, for a number of reasons, she, you know, again, I go back to, she really wanted a big student spirit, you know, real, when you think of like the traditional rah-rah, that's what she wanted. And there was a little bit of tension with that compared to some of the schools that we thought she should be looking at. So, you know, we did get her to go visit a number of the campuses where we thought she would fit in. And look, at the end of the day, she walked away and she said, look, these are beautiful, the academics are great, but this is not the vibe that I want. And so fortunately, she was able to find a school that had fabulous academics and the school spirit that she was looking for. Louis, you'll remember we had lots of discussions about school spirit, right? And how it comes in all different ways. So there was a little bit of tension there, but you know, look, we also really, in some respects, you know, we wanted to defer to her because it is her college experience. And, you know, she did approach it thoughtfully and was able to say, I want this school, like this school has, you know, the academics I want and the school spirit. And I would prefer that to, you know, I'll be honest, I really wanted her like to apply to Brown. I thought Brown was like, it was beautiful. I mean, you guys were there, right? It's just a special campus. And she was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I don't, you know, it's not for me. So we navigated that and all turned out well, but that was one area that was a little, you know,
Gotcha.
we had some discussions.
I think for Sean, it was a very honest process for him, because I think Louis, when he first spoke with you, he was maybe interested in engineering. And so I think you listed some engineering schools, whereas I saw him more like a well-rounded student, but I didn't say much. I was like, okay, well, that, you know, and then I had him talk to some professionals in engineering, and he looked at the schools, what is it, like the major concentration, you know, all the classes you take. And I think that he had to really kind of confront his own, like himself in an honest way to kind of say, well, could I just see myself doing mostly that? And I think it shifted over the year and went towards more of this exploration. And, he never got to take art or dance or music at Berkeley Carroll. It was so heavy in the humanities and sciences. And I think that he really shifted his course throughout the year, actually, yeah.
I mean, we had that initial tension about the geographic locations of the schools, where my husband and I wanted Ryan to stay on the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic, like within a 4 to 5 hour drive of New York. And I mean, for the most part, that was okay with Ryan, but he also wanted to look at some schools in California, like Stanford and Caltech. So that was kind of a little bit of a tension with us. And I would say that was like the main thing. And I also wanted him to add to the list, some more of the Ivy League schools, because I felt like he had a very good chance of getting into any of the Ivy League schools, because he had very good grades, but he also took the SAT despite COVID. He also took like the Compass prep course to help practice for the SAT, and he did very well on the SAT. So I really felt that he had a very good chance of getting into one of the Ivy League schools. So I was kind of pushing him to apply to, Harvard and Yale and Princeton and all of the Ivies that were not necessarily on the initial list. So that was kind of a little bit of a tension as well, because, I just felt like he should at least try. And I just felt like he should try and then see where he gets in, and then we would make a decision after he found out, what schools he got into. But he ended up, after all our exploration, he ended up deciding to do early decision. He honed in on a school that he really thought he wanted to go to. And so, there was a little bit of a tension, a tug of war there with us.
We had the same geographic, but because I actually went to college in California and I'm a Northeast person. So Piper too, but she actually, my husband and I said to her, look, that would not be my first choice for you. It's just far. It's like a 6-hour flight, and if you want to come home from the weekend and see your friend.
Right.
But I did say, if you want to look, we can look and you can apply. And like you, we can see what happens. She naturally on her own, I think by November of her senior year, she decided that, she wanted to be within, sort of the middle of America is where she drew her line. That it was a 2-hour flight or the Northeast or the South. So she naturally made that decision, which I was really happy about, because, it is, it's a trek out there.
Yeah.
I know a number of kids from her class are at schools in California and are very happy. But for her, I'm glad she decided that was not what she wanted to do.
Yeah. And one thing I'm hearing from all of you is that, it takes open communication, right? Like there might be polar opposite perspectives or opinions happening in this process. And then when you add in the college counselor, right, it's kind of like another person that's, giving advice and meeting with the student, right? So really understanding that your student is being pulled in like multiple directions sometimes, and that's not a good place to be in. But really kind of sitting down and talking through them, through things, exposing them to things, exposing them to different realities. And in a perfect world, they'll come to that decision on their own, right? and vice versa. Sometimes the parents or the families have to come to that realization on their own that like this is what their student wants. And how you all get there, I think that's an individual process and a family process, but a team process nonetheless. We have a question in the chat. So the question is about extracurricular activities. So extracurricular activities are something that's reported on the application. So the question is, sorry, it just disappeared quickly. The question is, did your students have rich extracurricular activities throughout their high school? If not, did that unfold naturally? Did they get involved naturally? Or did they intentionally start building extracurricular activities starting in 9th or 10th grade and higher?
My son did have a very wonderful, I think, extracurriculars at Berkeley Carroll, playing 2 sports and I think baseball and track. And then also he's a competitive chess player, and they had a chess after school program, but not a team. So he started a team, which was wonderful. And then he also offered his coaching to the lower school. So he got to meet the lower school kids after school for a while. And I think that was really special experience for him. And then he kind of surrounded his essay around that experience of having initiated something. So, and also I just want to say that he was part of, I can't remember if it's like Men of Color or Multiracial Color of Men, where he met a lot of friends. And so I thought that like what was so nice about the chess team was that the school was very supportive, and they ended up winning this huge New York City competition with all the top schools, which was really amazing. And so that was, just meeting kids through chess and initiating that program was just really wonderful for him.
And my son, he did sports, but he wasn't like, he was on the cross country team and the swim team, and this semester he's doing track as well. So when those sports teams involve practice like every day after school, so that took up a lot of his time. And then he also was interested in photography. He would do it more on his own. And over the summer, he did some student travel trips that revolved around photography. And, and he was also involved with other extracurricular activities at the school, like he's a peer leader, and he was on the Keys Society and things like that. But
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
finish. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. I lost my train of thought.
So again, my children's experience was slightly different because both of them, Piper, into like the middle of her junior year, and Logan throughout, were they're soccer players, and so the league that they played with, they were not allowed to. Logan was not allowed to play any sports for Berkeley Carroll, and both of them, their training schedules, I mean, they trained every day, outside of school, and were constantly traveling, and the school is very supportive. And so what both of them were able to do, so for any parents out there who have children who are, competitive athletes, they found a lot of extracurriculars within the school day. So like the Key Society, peer tutoring, the summers they played a lot of soccer too, but they tried to find things to do during the summer. I will say, it was a little challenging for Piper when she was putting together her Common App, right? So on the Common App, you list, there's all these boxes, you list all of your extracurriculars, and Piper did find it necessary to put in an extra statement explaining, look, I left school at 3:30. I had to travel an hour to training, or an hour and a half. I trained for 2 hours. I didn't get home till 9 o'clock at night. That was Monday through Thursday. I was traveling on the weekends. And so she did feel it was necessary to explain why she was a little light on some of these extracurriculars, because look, as Berkeley Carroll parents, I will say pretty uniformly, our children are very, very involved with lots and lots of things. There's lots of opportunities. And, I remember her saying to me, well, this person's, they have all these extracurriculars and I have like soccer and peer tutoring and key society. And so it was a little, again, different for us. I will say, just as a general observation, I do think that the schools really like to see well-rounded kids. Right? They like to see kids who do everything, who are involved and have, lots of different experiences. That's sort of my sense of observing, this whole process.
Yeah.
Oh, can I just add that Sean was part of the debate team for 4 years, and what the part that I want to emphasize is that what was so great about the debate team was that you start out as a beginner, but then as you continue, the teachers, the coaches really help you to become a mentor for the younger 9th and 10th graders. And even after you graduate, you can judge for the competitions, and that you continue that relationship with the team. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities where you start out in 9th or 10th grade involved in something, but then you evolve into other roles that I think are very helpful in, I guess, in the college applications.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I want to mention is there's no right or wrong extracurricular activity. Really, ideally you would love your student to be involved in certain things, but it has to be things that they're passionate about. And using Sean as an example, his passion for wanting to start a chess team and a chess club resulted in him being able to talk about an experience in his essay, right? It kind of organically happened. And thinking about, what your students can be involved in, like if you're putting them in something, or I don't want to use the word forcing, but if you're strongly advising, right, to put your child in something that they don't want to do, it's not going to resonate in the application process. But letting them kind of naturally be involved, encouraging them to be involved in things that they like and their passions. When they're in a college interview, when they are writing their essays or their supplements, it just has a different affect that I think lands very differently and organically when the person's on the other end receiving that, writing or receiving that interview. It just resonates differently. And another thing, Wendy, I'm happy you brought that up with Piper, because I remember having that conversation and being like, put this in your additional information. But colleges will read with the application within the context of what the student is experiencing, right? So if a student is, has a huge commitment and they can't be involved, that's something that they take into consideration. If a student has a really long commute, if they're coming from the Bronx or Jersey or Queens, right, they're probably not gonna most of the time do sports and then get home at like 10 p.m., right? Or like 8 or 9 p.m. and then have to do homework. So there's so many things that, you can share throughout the application process to let them know, like, hey, this is what my life was like. And, I just want to provide you with this information so that you can understand why I was or was not involved so much. And virtually, I think that was also a big curveball for students to get involved when there wasn't as necessarily anything to get involved in, because everything was in the virtual sphere of life. But, I think our students did a really good job of making co-curriculars and affinity groups meet, kind of in the metaverse, if I would say, and also understanding that, passion projects and, different things and hobbies at that time were extracurriculars, because that's all that students could really do at the time.
I think one thing, Wendy, like it sounds like your kids were stellar athletes. But one thing that I was kind of intimidated by in the Common App and stuff, it kept asking like, do they win things, or like what ranking, whatever. And that was a little intimidating because it was like, oh gosh, just practice and entering all these cross country and base. It was so much time and debate and all these, weekends. And but I think in the end it all works out.
Yeah, and I think kind of piggybacking off of that, I think that, like you said, the Common App makes it feel like, well, what was my position and what was my leadership?
Yeah.
And for some things, that might be true for your student, but the reality is that, when I used to read for admissions at 2 universities, they weren't looking for everyone to be a leader, right? And what we used to tell students is, if everyone's a leader and we accept all the leaders, then we're not going to have any supporters or members for these clubs or organizations when we're really looking to see, like, what do you do and what are you going to add to our campus? So it's really just kind of like organically letting your student kind of explore things. But I would say, like, it's nice to see that they are involved in things, because one, it shows what they're passionate about. I think it develops them as a person. And then when they're, writing about college or applying to college, things translate differently. And colleges can see, like, what are you going to add to our community? Those are the real big things that they're looking for. Switching gears and talking about the college essay, everyone's favorite subject. So to explain to the audience, students most of the time will have to write a personal essay about themselves. It's about 650 words, and basically most colleges that they apply to will see this essay. So I think what's a little daunting for some students is that it's so open-ended, it can be about anything. So my question for you parents is, how did your student approach the essay, and how involved were you with their essay writing process, with picking a topic or, proofreading? What was your role in that entire part of the application?
So I'm glad that essay writing is over. I found that process, just witnessing, to be stressful, right? Because it is open-ended. And so I think Piper, it was a process where she had to figure out what she wanted to reveal about herself. And I think you were really helpful, Louis, in sort of focusing her on, I think she wound up talking about a growth experience and how she really, how her personality evolved and over the years. But it was, I think for her, the stressful part was putting the pen to paper, right? To just get that initial draft done. And I think, the school is great because they really get on the kids. I think the end of junior year is when there's really serious discussions with the school about focusing in on the essay, and really there's the expectation, but by the time the kids start their senior year, that they have a draft. And so I thought that was great, because the otherwise she probably would have started it like the middle of September. So and for me, she wrote it. I looked at the first draft. My kids think I'm a lawyer, so like probably like a lot of you, I write in large part for a living. So they're always really reluctant to have me look at their written materials. But she did let me see it. I think most of the editing, Louis, was through the school. I think she said, look, this is my essay. You can read it. You can tell me what you think, but it's mine. And she really I didn't see the version until you both had worked on it significantly. So that's how her process was. And I think at the end of the day, it was a great essay.
Yeah.
But I was really helpful that the school really took the lead.
Yeah, and I remember Piper's essay morphed significantly once it was, because she went with one topic, and I was like, "Oh, that's a great topic." Got it down on paper, and then once there was
She had a dream.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, it was hard for her to get started, but once she got started, it was down. And I think that's the beauty of, like, once a student has a draft and we're working in and we're workshopping it. She walked away and she was like, I don't know, I don't feel like it's there. Had a dream and then just produced this like
Exactly.
magnificent essay that was like 10 times better than the first one, but it was the process of her getting there, which I thought was really
Yeah.
beautiful.
I remember her waking up and coming down and she said, all right, I woke up in the middle of the night. I had this dream. I knew what I wanted to write. And she like completely wrote a new essay. So it is, I think the lesson from that is that it is a process.
For
You
sure.
know, and the kids really take it so seriously and they stress over it. So I just really tried to support her in that process.
Absolutely.
Ryan didn't really involve me too much in the process. Like he kind of just wanted to do it himself, and he didn't really want my input too much. So I didn't really see it until he finished. I mean, I don't even think I saw a first draft. Like I guess he just didn't really want me to weigh in, and you know, so he really relied on Mr. Almonte to help him, or for editing and things like that. So I was kind of out of the loop on that.
Yeah. But he made a wonderful essay, which I remember distinctly. And that one morphed a couple times too,
Mhm.
which I think was great. And I would say, I think we could both agree. I think we saw a side of your son that was not what we usually see in terms of
Right.
personality. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I expected him to kind of talk more about himself and his background and things like that, but he didn't really want to talk about that. So I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really have much input into the whole process, and that's the way he wanted it. So
Yeah. And I think there's sometimes where you get a student and you're expecting like, oh, like, you know, maybe your essay will be about this, maybe your essay will be about that. And then you get the essay and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this about you. Or I wasn't expecting this, right? But it still turns out to be something beautiful that they're sharing about themselves.
mhm,
And sometimes it's in this process, they're letting somebody in to see a place that they don't necessarily show all the time.
mhm,
I think with Sean, we explored various themes, like a growth or discovery or identity formation or meaningful experiences. We also read these phenomenal essays by New York Times, you know, these college entry essays that were featured in New York Times that were really intimidating.
Yeah.
And but you know, it really ended up being something that kind of contained a lot of himself, whimsy, discovery. He discovered that he could be a leader. He, you know, initiating the chess team and just making really deep friendships with one another. So the meaning of friendships. And so he's a very whimsical writer. So I think he wrote a lot of Mr. Lewis's kind of guidance towards like how to really stay with the theme. And then we have a family friend who was a senior in college, and she kind of helped him also editing process to just make it even more tight. And so it was a really enjoyable process for us, actually. I really enjoyed reading his drafts and like, and it was really, it showed his earnestness and honesty and his growth and discovery of himself. So it was, I mean, I think the parts that were difficult and not as fun were the supplementals.
Yeah, there's a lot. Sometimes there's a lot of those, and they're not the most creative questions, and sometimes they are. But I think that's a group consensus that most of the students say that the supplementals are their least favorite part. So we are coming up on. We have 5 minutes left. So what we want to do is, if you could reveal where your student or students decided where to enroll, and taking into consideration, you know, where you started at in this process as a parent and the end of the process, if you could just kind of give one piece of advice to the audience, for the 9th and 10th grade parents who will be starting this either next year or the following year after. So just to reiterate again, if you can reveal where your student went to school, and then one piece of advice for parents based off of your experience and what you've been through.
I would say that it was in the beginning quite overwhelming, especially kind of stuck at home. But my son is at Skidmore and he's really happy discovering the arts for the first time. And I would say you'll get through it. And some parts are a little hard, but some parts are really enjoyable. Like the essay part was really fun for all of us. And then, you know, what sealed him to go to Skidmore was that when he visited, he really, really loved the campus. It's like the beautiful campus, and he was, you know, familiar with Saratoga Springs, and also not being so far, and that he could just come home taking the train was really, I think, a highlight for him. But you know, I felt like I was learning a whole new foreign language in this process, and I felt like there was some mastery towards the end. So I you know, I'm sure everybody will do really well.
Perfect.
So, you know, if you're parents of 9th and 10th graders, things change. So that's my piece of advice. Like you just, you know, your kids, who they are right now as 9th graders or 10th graders, they're going to mature and become even more of their own selves as they become, you know, as they get older. So their colleges, or the colleges you may be thinking of as a family right now, may not be the colleges that they ultimately, you know, are interested in. So I think you just, as my advice is, you know, you just need to remain flexible and to listen to them. So Piper, who just finished her freshman year, and I will say is living her absolute best life, is at the University of Michigan. And I was saying for her, she was able to find, you know, amazing academics, along with a really big school, which is what she wanted. And, you know, one of the things, you know, it's really nice to hear her say that she, you know, everybody plays hard, but they also really study hard. Because one of the things I did love about Berkeley Carroll, is just sort of an aside, is that it was cool to be smart, right? There's some schools where it's not cool to be smart. At Berkeley Carroll, everybody really strives and tries their hardest and commits to academics. And that's what she found at Michigan, just a bigger group. And my son is finishing his junior year at Syracuse. And again, his process was very, very different. So if you have student athletes out there, I mean, Logan pretty much in, I think the beginning of his sophomore year is when, you know, he was really taught, you know, he knew in his sophomore year that Syracuse was where he wanted to go. He focused in on the coaching and the soccer program rather than some other stuff. So he was a unique experience, but I think just be flexible, listen to your kids, you know, go see schools that you may have no intent on paying for and sending them to, but at least it will, you know, give you an idea of what they're looking for and be able to help them, you know, through the process.
And Ryan is going to be going to Cornell starting in the fall, and he's in the College of Engineering, but he likes the idea that he can take courses in other disciplines. Like he wants to study, he's been trying to teach himself Japanese for the past year. So he wants to take some Japanese courses. He's going to be taking, he wants to do a minor in architecture. So at least that provides him with the ability to take courses in other disciplines. And I mean, the one piece of advice I would just say is try not to push your kid in one direction or the other, you know, try to let them make the decision themselves. I had to like pull back. You know, I was trying to kind of influence him one way or the other, but, you know, I realized like this is his decision, and And, you know, I don't want him to resent me if I forced him to go to a school he didn't want to go to. Like, I wanted it to be his decision. So ultimately, I just kind of stepped back a bit and tried not to push too much in one way or the other. So I think that is important.
It's hard though, isn't it?
Yes.
I agree with you. It's hard to like keep your mouth shut.
Wise words. So we are at time. I want to say thank you so much to our panelists, Shinhee, Wendy, Laura. Thank you so much for all your fabulous advice and being open about your experiences with your students. That's such valuable information for our, guiding and advising our future families, and helping contain some anxiety or shedding some light on some questions that they have. But thank you so much on behalf of the college office and the Berkeley Carroll School. We really appreciate your involvement with this panel. And for the audience, thank you so much for tuning in, participating, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.